Okay, so now we're going to talk about dividing complex numbers. Well, it turns out we don't really divide. To divide, you're going to multiply by the conjugate of the denominator. Now that's important that we do the denominator. Okay, so here I have 3i over 4 plus I. So what we're going to do is similar to our process for rationalizing a denominator, get a square root out of the denominator. So we're going to multiply by the conjugate, which is 4 minus I in this case. Well, whatever we multiply the denominator by, we're going to multiply in the numerator. And then it's a matter of doing the multiplication. Okay, so up in the numerator I have 3i times 4, which is going to be 12i. And then I have 3i times negative I, which is going to be negative 3i squared. In the denominator, I'm going to think 4 times 4, which is 16. And then I don't have to do the O and the I. You can if you want to. You're going to get negative 4i and positive 4i, and those are going to cancel out. But I'm going to have positive I times negative I, which is negative I squared. Now, I like to write that out just so I can see what's happening. But that I squared, both of them, that's going to be negative 1. So now I'm going to have, in the numerator, 12i, it's a negative 1. So it's going to be plus 3. And then, does everybody see that? So it's a negative 3 times a negative 1. So I'm changing the sign on that minus 3. Now it's plus 3. And now in the denominator, I'm going to have 16 plus 1. Okay, so again, that I squared is negative 1, so I have minus a minus 1. Okay? Now, we're not going to write it, well, let me write this. 12i plus 3 over 17. That is not an a plus bi form. So I'm going to fix it. I'm going to put the 3 first, the real number part, and I'm going to split them up. So it's going to be 3 over 17 plus 12 over 17i. Now it's in a plus bi form, standard form. That looks good. If you can reduce the fractions, reduce the fractions. These don't reduce because of the 17 there, but anyway, that's how you do it. We're going to do another problem in this video. It's the same process, but it's a little bit different. Okay, so that's my final answer that I have a box around. All right, so here we have another division situation here. But you can see the numerator is not a pure imaginary number this time. It is a complex number in a plus bi form. Okay, so I have 7 plus 4i over 2 minus 5i. So again, we multiply by the conjugate of the denominator. So 2 plus 5i. So sometimes students get confused on that. They want to do the numerator, but don't. It's the denominator that we're multiplying by. We're trying to get that I out of the denominator. So you're going to multiply by the complex conjugate of the denominator. Okay. And then in the numerator, we're also going to multiply by that conjugate, and it's going to be some multiplication for us to do. So we get to practice our multiplication. In the numerator, I'm going to have 7 times 2, which is 14. Sorry. And then I'm going to have plus 35i. And then I'm going to have plus 8i. So I'm just foiling away here, having a good time. Plus 20i squared. And again, I just write the 20i squared, and I'll deal with the I squared later. By the way, you're never going to have an I squared in your final answer because that can always be simplified to negative 1. Okay, in the denominator, I'm going to have 4. 2 times 2 is 4. And then I'm going to have, and I usually write this out, minus 25i squared. Okay, and then we'll deal with that in a minute. All right. So I've got 14 in the numerator. These can be combined, so it's 35 and 8, 43. And then this back part, that's going to be minus 20, because the I squared is negative 1. Okay, so think 20 times negative 1. That's kind of the part you have to get used to. In the denominator, you're going to have 4 plus 25. Again, this I squared is -1, so we're going to change the sign on that minus 25 and now have plus 25. Okay, so just a little bit more to do here. The 14 and the minus 20, so that's -6 plus 43i, and then the denominator is a 29. But we're not going to write it that way. We're going to write it in a plus bi form, so we split it up into two parts. The real part, -6 over 29, plus the imaginary part, 43 over 29i. Okay. There we go. Now it's in a plus bi form, and we're happy, and it's great. And these, I think, are a lot of fun, but that's just me.